My name is Chris Benner. I'm the faculty director of the Institute for Social Transformation, which is the home on the UC Santa Cruz campus of the Right Livelihood Center. And tonight is all about really celebrating 10 years of UC Santa Cruz being involved with the Right Livelihood Award and being part of the Right Livelihood College Network, which you'll hear a little bit more. And it's also about celebrating a new role we're taking on to help coordinate that work of the Right Livelihood College Network and really trying to help build out support from universities around the globe for some of the most inspirational leaders, policymakers, activists around the globe who are working to solve some of the most pressing global environmental, social, and economic problems of our day. So small little issue we're here celebrating today. My role today is just really as an MC to help facilitate things. We're going to have some introductory remarks from our chancellor. We have some proclamations, which we're deeply appreciative of some of our local elected officials. Our Dean of Social Sciences, Catherine Mitchell, will say a few words, and then introduce our laureates and panelists and facilitator tonight. We have about an hour and a half. There'll be some sort of facilitated discussion here initially, but then we really want to be in conversation with those of you in the audience too. So you'll see on your seats a 3x5 card. And just to facilitate the filming and the microphone and sound, if you'll write your questions on the card and then pass it down to the end of the aisle, I'll be collecting that and then hand it up to our moderator, Ahmad Thomas from the Silicon Valley Leadership Group to ask those questions, and we'll finish up by 8 o'clock. So without further ado, please welcome the Chancellor of UC Santa Cruz, Cindy LaRive.
I'm vertically challenged. Well, I want to thank all of you for being here. It's a great venue. I don't know, many of you are here for the first time at our Silicon Valley Center. A lot of exciting work happens here, including work by our Baskin School of Engineering in natural language processing and human-computer interaction. But tonight, we're here hosting the Right Livelihood International Conference. How delightful. We're also proud to be celebrating the 10th anniversary of our joining the Right Livelihood and creating a center at UC Santa Cruz. And we're excited to be starting our new role as the Global Secretariat of the Right Livelihood College Network. At UC Santa Cruz, we take great pride in educating and graduating the future change makers in our unwavering commitment to social and environmental justice. Because we share these values with the Right Livelihood, our relationship is synergistic, and it's one that we can leverage together to have even greater impact. I want to thank the many organizations from our campus who have signed on as conference supporters and sponsors, and give special thanks to the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, which is sponsoring today's event. UC Santa Cruz values our membership in the Silicon Valley Leadership Group and greatly appreciates its vision of corporate citizenship and efforts to catalyze a more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable region here in Santa Clara and this greater Silicon Valley. I extend a warm welcome to our Right Livelihood Laureates who are participating in tonight's conversation and invite them to the front of the room. Phyllis Omido and Juan Pablo Orrego, thank you so much for your participation. It's an honor to have you with us. Yes, please. I also want to recognize the delegation of International Right Livelihood students, our UC Santa Cruz Right Livelihood Center faculty, those who are here from our Institute for Social Transformation, including its faculty director, Chris Benner, who you just heard from, our UC Santa Cruz Social Sciences Dean, Catherine Mitchell, as well as David Shaw, coordinator of the Right Livelihood Center at UC Santa Cruz. So if you'd all join us at the front, Students, faculty, Catherine, come on up. We're going to get a great photo. I'd also like to invite today's esteemed speaker, Sanjeev Malhotra, and moderator Ahmad Thomas to the front. We can squeeze everybody in. We have a wide-angle lens, don't worry. And then finally, I'd like to welcome Congressman Ro Khanna's aide, Jordan Tachibana, and State Senator Ashi Wahab's staff, Elizabeth Vaca, to come forward. They will be presenting a certificate of proclamation to the UC Santa Cruz Right Livelihood Center for its work over the past 10 years to build a more just, peaceful, and sustainable world.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Let me just lift that up. I would like to thank everyone for having Senator Aisha Wahab's office here today. We are so proud to be here honoring the Right Livelihood Center for their 10-year anniversary for all that they do to address the global issues by collaborating between nations and connecting students with universities. So I would like to say that on behalf of the Office of Senator Aisha Wahab, congratulations on your 10-year anniversary and your efforts to establish an international student network to boost the voice of youth and students worldwide. Thank you. I believe I'm presenting this to Dave.
Sorry. But thank you so much to UC Santa Cruz and the Right Center for Livelihood. It is so important to create these bridges, and thank you to the students for being here. It's all about, I've talked about with someone earlier, workforce development and creating these pathways and providing opportunities. You know, at the federal level, we've been working on implementing aspects of the IRA, which is the most progressive and aggressive investment in climate development, green energy. And so President Biden has also launched his Climate Corps with 2,000 jobs for young people seeking opportunities in clean energy and green energy, and that as a career pathway. So it's so important that we continue to bridge these gaps. And so thank you so much to UC Santa Cruz for continuing to do that and leading the way on it. It's so important to have people who are going to be pioneers and future pioneers here. So thank you very much for 10 years, and here's to many, many more.
Well, that was fun. My name is Catherine Mitchell. I'm the Dean of the Social Sciences, and I'm so delighted to be here. I'm delighted for so many reasons. This is going to be an amazing, dynamic conversation where we touch some new ground and important topics. And we're also here to celebrate 10 years of the Right Livelihood Center, so being at UC Santa Cruz. So many thanks to David for that and bringing it here originally. So thanks to you, David, for that. And I also, you really had a vision long before people thought about this as something important and made it happen. And I also want to thank Chris Benner because he's so good at acknowledging and thanking other people, and rarely does the spotlight turn on him, and he's actually one of the main movers and shakers for events like this as the director of the Institute for Social Transformation. So thank you, Chris. So the Social Sciences Division is proud to be the home for the Right Livelihood Center, which aligns tightly with our own mission of promoting scholarship that helps solve some of the most challenging problems of our time, in partnership with people and institutions leading those solutions. We hope this is the beginning of the next decade of vibrant conversations and events with the Right Livelihood Center. So tonight, we're having a conversation about a just transition to a green economy. How can we accelerate the creation of an economy rooted in renewable energy and carbon-free transportation systems, but do it in an equitable way that helps regenerate rather than exploit our environment, and supports communities at the front lines of new sites of extraction and processing rather than perpetuate and sacrifice zones of environmental destruction and community marginalization. To help us with this conversation, we have invited two Right Livelihood Laureates, who you've heard about and I will talk about more, with incredible experience that can help us in understanding some of the key challenges in this green transition. First is Juan Pablo Orrego. He's a Chilean musician and environmentalist, particularly focused on the connections between energy policy, the environment, indigenous people's rights, monopolies, and economic policy. One especially critical issue here is the mining of critical minerals for electric vehicles. Not including steel and aluminum, an electric vehicle has more than 5 times as much minerals by weight as a conventional vehicle, with lithium and copper being critical for the battery and the electric motor. And Chile is the second largest global producer of lithium and the first largest for copper. We also have with us tonight Phyllis Omido, who is an environmental activist from Kenya. She became especially known for her struggle to protect her community from lead poisoning associated with a lead battery smelting plant. Recycling of lead-acid batteries has been one of the supposed success stories. And since the 1990s, more than 97% of lead-acid batteries in the US have been recycled. Yet, lead poisoning remains a problem for communities near recycling as well. Near battery recycling plants here as well. Lithium-ion batteries will need recycling, and Phyllis Omido's perspectives can help remind us of how to build a truly circular economy that doesn't poison communities. We've asked the Right Livelihood Laureates to be in conversation with one of the country's preeminent leaders in the green energy transition. Sanjeev Malhotra's perspectives are particularly important here since he has experience in both the public and the private sector. He was the first director of the Energy Investor Center of the US Department of Energy, helping direct public funds into the most promising areas. He has been a serial entrepreneur and is currently the founder and CEO of Sparks. To moderate the discussion this evening, we are very grateful to have with us the CEO of one of the country's most dynamic business associations driving the innovation economy and its ecosystem. Ahmad Thomas has experience as a senior congressional aide and investment banker and brings more than 2 decades of experience to this work. So please join me in welcoming these illustrious speakers tonight and joining the conversation.
Well, thank you very much for that incredibly generous introduction.
Really.
Quite a high bar, and I hope we can, well, living up to that might not be possible, but I hope we can get close. And I first want to extend a huge thank you, my gratitude, Chancellor, Melissa, your amazing team, Chris, Dave, Santa Cruz, under your leadership has been such a great partner when we talk about your engagement across the region, across Silicon Valley, because I think this conversation is very relevant to the topics we've grappled with, right? How we create an economy that continues to accelerate and be an engine of growth for this country while doing so in a just and highly impactful way. So thank you for your leadership and congratulations to all of you on the 10-year anniversary. Turning to our panel, and Phyllis, I want to start with you. Juan Pablo, I'll turn to you next. We'll do our laureates first before Sanjeev.
No problem.
But I just want you to take a few minutes and introduce yourselves. And Phyllis, in particular, if you're comfortable sharing, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you're on a panel.
You are on the spot.
The story that I read about you and your child and the experience that you had that brought you into this work, it's so personal, it touches so many of us. I'd love if you'd share what brought you into this work and a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being here. My name is Phyllis Omido. I'm an environmental activist from East Africa, a country called Kenya. At some point in my life, I was young. a young student like, like all of you, and I had dreams and ambitions. And one of my dreams and ambitions was to join the corporate world and excel so that I could help my siblings get a better future. So I left my home, went into the city after my education to start working. I worked for several years, and there was an advert for a new corporation that was coming up. And I did business management. So I went for an interview and I passed, and I got a job as an admin officer for that organization. I had a small child by then, and I would take my child most of the time to work because he was still at an age where he was nursing. So during that time, most of the time, either he would be brought to me, to the office, to nurse, or because the daycare sometimes was half day, after the daycare, someone would drop him at the office with me. So a few months into that, my son fell sick, critically sick, and we took him to hospital. That led me into months and months of trying to diagnose what was wrong with my son. Of course, when your child falls sick in Africa, you test for malaria and other tropical diseases, typhoid, dengue fever, and everything was negative in his blood. But one of my friends who actually worked within the state agencies visited me in hospital and asked me, Phyllis, have you tried testing for lead poisoning? And I said, why should I test him for lead poisoning? And he told me, the place where you work, we see you with your child a lot, and we have had discussions about it. He could be exposed to lead poisoning. And so I asked the pediatrician to test my son for lead poisoning, and the pediatrician was shocked. He said, we don't test for lead poisoning. And I went to all the hospitals in Kenya, and none of them had the capacity to test for lead poisoning. I eventually identified a laboratory that was able to export my son's blood to South Africa for testing, and then bring it back 7 days later. And he had turned positive for lead poisoning. At the time, WHO described lead poisoning at 10 micrograms per deciliter of lead in blood. He had 45. And I think they've since then revised it to 5 micrograms per deciliter of lead in blood. So that started my trying to understand what was lead poisoning and how come Kenya did not even have the capacity to test for lead poisoning. And I was shocked because I realized that this is something that has been with us for centuries. Like, everyone knows about lead poisoning except our people in Kenya. And it started me on a journey of trying to find out why then was this brought to us? Why is it that I was given a job without being told that I was working in a place that was going to poison me and poison my child? And this journey started at first as, part of curiosity, trying to understand, trying to rectify what was wrong. So, of course, the first thing I did was inform my bosses that something was critically wrong because my child was sick. And at that same time, the company was in the process of doing what is called an initial environmental impact assessment report. And the expert that we had engaged to do it actually came out and told me, Phyllis, the negative impacts far outweigh the positive impacts for this thing. But because it's a company that is paying me, I'm afraid to write it down. So I told him, you have to write it down. I will handle it with my bosses. You write what your findings are and what your recommendations are. And this is what started my journey as an activist, because of course I tried to bring this to attention of my bosses and they would not hear of it. I tried to approach state agencies because I had worked within the industries for quite a while. So I knew most of them, they were my friends. But I realized that when I tried to raise this thing, the doors were shut in my face. I became an enemy. Many of them would not even entertain what I was saying. So the burden was on me now to try and prove that what I was saying was right. So I went into the community adjacent to the industry, and I spoke to the women, and I requested that they give me 10 children. And I went through the same process of taking their blood for tests, coming back 7 days later. All 10 children tested positive for lead poisoning. But this was not enough for anyone to listen to me. No state agency would listen to me. The industry would not listen to me. And it started my journey of trying to rectify something that I knew was going wrong in the community. After interacting with the community members, I realized that a lot was going on. First signs was that a lot of the vegetation was drying up. The livestock, the chicken, the goats that would drink from the effluent that was flowing from the industry into the river, into the community, most of them had died already. The women knew this, but the men, of course, were getting jobs. And so they were happy to ignore what was going on in the environment. So to answer your question, this is how my journey started. This is how my journey started. It was not easy for many years. From 2009 up to 2014, we were unable to get any of the state agencies. We brought this case before Parliament, we brought it before the Senate, and all of them would not take action to protect the community because the economic interests far outweighed the lives and health of the community members. And despite us tabling enough fact to show that this was having extreme negative impact and was even killing children, none of them was able to take the position to close down this smelter. Of course, when I started, I did not start out as an activist. In fact, when the media covered the story and they called me an activist, I was the first to say, no, I'm not an activist. I'm just trying to say that this thing has a negative impact on the community and something has to change. Along the way, somehow, I was arrested and arraigned in court, charged with inciting violence and illegal gathering. And that night, I had never been arrested in my life. That was the first time. And I was in the cells. I was terrified, actually, of what was going on outside. But in the morning, at the wee hours of the morning when I was being taken to court to be arraigned, when I was walking out of the police compound to go into the police vehicle, I realized that almost 1,000 members of the Winohuru community had slept outside the police cells to protect me. And when I was taken to court and arraigned, the court was full of the community members. And when I was asked to identify myself, that is the first time I said, my name is Phyllis Omido, and I'm an environmental activist. So that is how my journey began.
Thank you, Phyllis. It's an incredible reflection, I think, of your bravery. You know, as I told you before we started, you know, I was aware of your background, but I also think of those people that did little things along the way. You mentioned writing the report. You mentioned 1,000 of your neighbors that slept outside, you know, when you were in jail. It's so interesting what one person can do who is brave and willing to step up and tell the truth. And obviously for you, it was about your child. So thank you, Phyllis. And Juan Pablo would love to hear your reflections on your story and what has brought you to this important work. I'm sorry to put you after Phyllis. I'm just going in order.
Right. Well, good evening to you all, and thanks to the college, particularly Dave, for inviting me. It's pretty amazing to be here right now. I don't know if you feel how much for me this place, you know, with all of you. Pretty powerful. Well, my story is a bit different, but has similarities too. It's a braid. The way I got to be an ecologist and an activist, I see it as a complex braid with many, many elements, you know. And one of them is music, curiously. Another one very important, and I cannot tell you now why music played a role there, it would be too long. And another element is indigenous peoples, without any doubt. You know, I'm pretty sure I'm an ecologist because of what I saw and felt, you know, sharing with Andean indigenous peoples in particular, you know. That before the European occupation probably was one of the most amazing, you know, and organized communities in the world, you know. And ecologically also, not only culturally or socially, but also ecologically. The whole, you know, system of ecological levels, you know, sharing among all of them the different products, etc. You know? And even the military coup is between all of this, you know. In Chile, Pinochet. In fact, I went to Canada the first time to do my BA in fine arts because my whole family had to flee. I have friends who were murdered. You know, somebody was asking me about Victor Jara, the musician, the Chilean musician that was massacred. I played with Victor Jara. One of his most emblematic songs, El Derecho a Vivir en Paz, we are the group, the group we had, accompanying Victor Jara in this song, El Derecho de Vivir en Paz. It's a very famous song. So I would have never gone to Canada if it wasn't because of the coup and that I had an uncle in Toronto that invited me at the beginning to offer some help while I settled. You know, it was very tough. Huh? The first period in Canada, I didn't have a work visa. I had to work illegally. You know, I have been everything you can imagine. That, you know, I have, you know, washed windows in buildings. I've been a bartender and a waiter, and et cetera, washed dishes.
Could you speak English or French?
I had a North American stepfather for 10 years. Okay. And then I went to a French school, but in this French school, they taught also English. You know? So I was kind of bilingual. But then so many stories. But then I did a master in environmental studies, you know. It's kind of interesting for me to look at this back, you know, because finally my theme was, or the name of the thesis was, of rooted and unrooted peoples towards a biospherical being. You know, this is 1986, which, you know, is like a word game where you are saying like a homage to the biosphere in a way, but also showing this aspiration to be more biocentric and more biospherical in our paradigm, right, let's say. So I went back to Chile, and due to other circumstances, you know, finally I was invited to visit the Upper Biobío. This is the first campaign I was involved, which is located in the center of the country, okay, just in the center. It's an ecotone. It's where the driest climate of the north meets the wetter climate of the south, and the Biobío, 380 kilometers long. Chile is very narrow, so it's the second longest river, you know, connects ecosystems in the Patagonian ecosystem on the Argentine side with the Pacific Ocean. So it had the highest rates of biodiversity. Chile doesn't have very high rates of biodiversity because it's an island between the desert, the cordillera, the ice, and the ocean, right? So it's an insular, in a way, country. But this place was the richest, you know, and with very high rates of endemism, which is all of Chile is like that because of this insular condition. But on top of everything, this basin, this watershed, was and is still inhabited by indigenous communities, the Pehuenche, the people of the monkey puzzle tree, the people of the Pehuen, that's their name, right? And here we come to extractivism. That's where I first met extractivism. Because these engineers, you know, for me it's kind of amazing and it's a good start point, you know. These engineers, they went to the Upper Biobío. They didn't see the ecosystem clearly. They didn't see the indigenous communities, and they planned, you know, a stairwell of mega hydroelectric dams. 6, you know, they call this an hydraulical series. So they wanted to transform the whole Upper Biobío with all of those attributes into an engineering artifact, to generate electricity to boost development in Chile. In fact, today, these dams have very little water because Chile is suffering a drought. The saying in Chile is the desert is moving towards the south, So on top of everything, at that point, hydro was panacea, total panacea, renewable, sovereign, cheap. Cannot imagine how anybody thought a mega dam is cheap because the externalities were not there, not considered, All the ecological and social externalities were not considered, So I spent 11 years of my life, doing that campaign with many people. You always have to face such projects or whatever problems. You have to create coalitions as vast and diverse as possible, right? People from all walks of life, with different skills, different professions, right, etc. So,
how were you able to do that?
Oh, well, we started from zero, from scratch, and talking to people. And, there was no social networks. There was, we communicated by phone and fax. And faxes. I'm serious. No internet. I'm serious, man. Yeah. So in a way, Ahmad, you say that, and I wonder, it's like magical, because how were we able to do that, to convoke so many people? And there is an important point, that from the beginning, we started saying the dam is a symptom. The dams are a symptom of a deeper, malaise or sickness, which is Chile's totally extractive development or anti-development mode. I call it anti-development because what are the main pillars of Chile's economy until today, 21st century? Mega mining, industrial fishing to a level that everything is vanishing, all the species of fish are vanishing, And then plantations of pines and eucalyptus, and plantations, agro-industrial plantations. Today, it's European hazelnuts, thousands of hectares of European hazelnuts for making Nutella, I guess, and for making European chocolates with hazelnut, It's outrageous. So talking about, you mentioned it, but the thing is, after this, we lost. We were defeated because they were able to build 2 mega and then a third one. But we stopped 4. And even more larger scale, you see, we were able to expose who wins with such contraptions or such projects and who loses, including the environment. So we took away the license for mega dams in Chile. So for the next 10 years, no more mega dams were built. And then they came back with a vengeance. The Chilean privatized company, Endesa, that then was bought by Spanish Endesa, and then was bought by Enel from Italy, the sharks eating each other constantly. They wanted to build 5 dams in the heart of Chilean Patagonia. So, you see, I forgot to say this, what is in the mind of such engineers and such people and such businessmen that they don't see, They don't see the communities, they don't see the ecosystem, they don't see the values, they don't see the attributes, That's something that totally astounds me. There is like a blindness, something that it's very hard to understand. Well, in the case, to finish, in the case of Patagonia, and we are very proud of this, again, with a very large coalition, I was one of the spokespersons with several more. It's good to have several spokespeople, women, men, young, older, different skills and ways of speaking. It's the best not to have one spokesperson, So finally we were 80 organizations from Chile and abroad. I was telling the students, so beautiful to have the support of Spanish activists, of Italian activists, German, in Belgium, because those people are helping other people to save Patagonia, which is, 14,000 kilometers away. So that shows something that is emerging in this planet, this consciousness, this solidarity. And to finish, this project, we made it disappear from the face of the earth. The company was dissolved, the water rights were given back, so it's a total victory.
Yeah, thank you, Juan Pablo. Again, amazing reflection. And Sanjeev, I want to make sure to bring you in to tell your journey, which you have that unique perspective, someone who's been a senior leader in government and someone who's been a very successful entrepreneur, and would love for you to share about your journey.
Well, I'm not an activist, so I can't match Felix's story or Juan Pablo's story. I can match one thing. I was arrested, though.
You were
All right.
I was arrested.
Maybe we leave
My
that one.
first
leave that one
month
for a
in the
different
United
panel.
States, I was told that, I came to University of Iowa for doing a dual master's. And I was told that they have $1 for a pitcher of beer. So I and another friend of mine, an American fellow, we ended up at a bar, and I come out of the bar, and next morning when I wake up, I'm in a cell. And I was produced in front of the judge, and the charges that were read were that you were singing in native language and you were doing some kind of a dance on the road, disrupting traffic. Well, so I told the judge, I said, I don't drink, which obviously was a lie. And I said, I don't sing. But she actually, I don't sing, so I don't know what happened. But I did end up in the jail cell. They have something called public intoxication. Weird law. This was 35 years ago. So she said $50 and you're gone. So, so I was definitely arrested. But folks, I don't drink, and I'm serious now, I'm not lying. I don't drink, and I don't sing. So don't ask me to sing. I'm not an activist. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a business person. Don't chase me out, guys. I'm not one of those kind of business people. But I grew up in India. I grew up on the eastern part of India where there's a lot of coal mining. My dad worked for a British company, and we had a very good family, my sibling and I and my parents. December 26, 1975, something happened that just changed the whole trajectory of my family. And what happened was that essentially there was a mine in a place called Chasnala. There are a few folks who look like they're from India, so they might remember this. The mine flooded, and that was the worst mining accident in the history of mining. In hours, literally maybe a couple of hours, I think 275 people died.
Wow.
I'll have water too, please.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you see.
So essentially, what happened was there was a lake or a pond next to the mine. There was a little hole in the wall.
Thank you.
And that developed into a major hole, and essentially that led to these miners being trapped, and within a couple of hours they were gone. My dad, who was the chief engineer at that mine, he tried very hard to get some sort of compensation for the families, but the British company packed their they packed their stuff and left. And no compensation was given. Oh, thank you so much. And so no compensation was given to the families. My dad tried very hard, but he could not. And what happened then was that he decided to represent the labor union. So he left his career as an engineer, as a civil engineer, and became a labor activist. He actually went to England, enrolled in a law school, became a barrister, and came back and represented the labor union. So the whole family's trajectory changed, and we would have these folks, who were his colleagues, other engineers or supervisors who were fortunate that they were not in that shift in the mine. They would gather at a place and talk about this accident. And one thing I learned from, I was born in '68, so you can guess my age. I was 7 years old. Yes, I am. I know. Yes, it's just a bad hair day. So they would talk about how if there was technology, these people would have been saved. They would have had sensors there. They would have all sorts of other, detection devices where they could have detected that water was flowing in or there was a leak. And to a young mind, that was the opening for my mind that, yeah, maybe one day I'll become an engineer. Maybe I'll develop technology. Maybe I'll help the miners. Fast forward, I, 10 years from them, I took the entrance exam, got into an engineering college in India, did my chemical engineering, then got a scholarship and came to Iowa and got arrested. But always in my mind it was that I will go back and start something in India. But like they say, man proposes or humans propose and someone else disposes. So then I continued to go for my PhD, finished my PhD, and started my first company, which was in hydrogen fuel cells. And, so the whole India dream was left by the wayside. But I always thought that maybe I can do something for the miners. So when I started H-Power, I went to West Virginia and I said, guys, look, I want to do something in hydrogen and hydrogen fuel cells. They're like, get lost. We are too busy with coal mining. This was in the 90s, mid-90s. Coal mining was doing fairly well. So, couldn't do anything in West Virginia. Then, that company was sold and I started Urja. Same thing, went back to Pennsylvania and West Virginia, Kentucky. They said, no, not interested. This time around when I started Sparks, this was a very different story. I had a friend, I had already served in the Obama administration. So I went to a friend of mine who was President Biden's economic advisor, Brian Deese. I said, Brian, I really want to do something in West Virginia. He says, why? I said, look, the coal mining sector is pretty much dead. There are lots and lots of coal miners who cannot get a simple single meal on their table. And I said, let's leave politics aside. But if you can get me in touch with the powers to be in West Virginia, because I've been kicked out from there twice, I would really, really appreciate it. He says, you know what? Come back next month and I'll hold a meeting here, a round table, and I'll introduce you to the powers to be. So, and he lived up to his promise. And he set up a meeting where Senator Joe Manchin was there, Energy Secretary Granholm, and a few others, Gina Raimondo. And as the meeting started, he just pointed at me and said, Sanjeev, would you like to start up something in West Virginia? I said, hell yeah, sure, why not? I mean, before anyone could say anything, I was like, yes, I want to start something. These people look at me, it's like, who's this guy? I mean, there's 3 cabinet secretaries there. There is a senator there and senator's wife. So I told them the story and I said, guys, I want to start something in West Virginia. And Senator Manchin, again, I'm not a political guy. That's not me. To his credit, he really helped us a lot. And we started something in West Virginia where essentially now we are hiring coal mine workers who have, lost their jobs over the last few years, maybe a decade or so. And we actually have a labor union, it's the United Mine Workers, who essentially represents us. So we are the only battery company, I think, or maybe I'm wrong, but we are one of the battery companies that has a union labor. And the reason for that is essentially so that people can get their just pay, the right pay, and they can provide them the right training for safety and everything else. So that is how, in my own little way, obviously I couldn't do something for India, but we have started this factory in a place called Taylor County outside Morgantown. And we copied and pasted that model here in California. So our second factory is coming up in Sacramento, and here we partnered with the United Auto Workers. And again, our intent is that we, obviously President Biden has the Justice 40 initiative, but our intent is that not 40, but 50% of the folks we are hiring from disadvantaged community. And then factory number 3 is coming up. That's coming up in Salton Sea. I don't know if you guys know where Salton Sea is. It's Imperial County, and we are partnered with 2 American Indian tribes, Torres Martinez and Cabazon. And again, the idea is to hire exclusively from the tribes the factories on tribal land. And we have set up a battery workforce development center where folks get trained and then we hire them. So that's me, not an activist, but trying to grow a business.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good business.
Thank you, Sanjeev, and such an incredible panel. The next question I want to shift to solutions, right? And specifically hearing from you all around what your solution-oriented vision is for a just and green transition. Before I do so, I'll briefly say about me, to Sanjeev's point, I very much enter this conversation deeply connected and advocating for and as a representative and member of our business community. But my thesis, as the Chancellor alluded to earlier, is that those businesses that are most competitive, those businesses that can drive the most revenue and profitability are those businesses that get this right and are the most socially conscious businesses.
Yes.
And it's very interesting. I mean, I'm a Wharton-trained investment banker, right? I check a lot of boxes, but I also have a set of unique lived experience. My dad grew up in the segregated South. My mom's an immigrant from the West Indies, from Trinidad and Tobago. And I think for more of us who have a lens of lived experience, as we heard from each of our amazing panelists, there was something in their lives that touched them, that led them to view things differently, I think. And I do believe when we talk to at least the corporate leaders in Silicon Valley, I believe that recognition is there. But the next question, as I said, and Phyllis, I'll turn to you again, would be your thoughts around a vision for a just and green transition.
So my vision would be sustainability, where everyone is involved in the decision to move forward in terms of closing the energy gap. It cannot be a decision that is made by one set of people and then imposed on another set of people. It cannot be, we cannot talk of a just energy transition when some part of the production process or some kind of burden is borne by the most vulnerable people in our society. In battery recycling, for example, it was well known for many centuries that it had toxic impacts on the environment and health of communities. How is it then that in Kenya, just to digress a bit, after I took the case to court, one of the biggest arguments by the state agencies, because I sued the government, one of their biggest defense was that they lacked capacity to monitor the lead acid battery recycling industry in Kenya. And therefore, for me, if we are to talk about a just energy transition, we have to move together at the same pace. If we are talking about manufacturing and the cycle of manufacturing a battery, for example, it has to include the end of life of that battery. It cannot be that someone in Africa has to deal with a battery that was used in the US. That is not just. Because what was happening in Kenya is that batteries were being imported from all around the world, cleaned out, and then the waste is left in Kenya, and the communities, very poor communities, are the ones that are left to bear the burden of end of life of that battery. And then pure lead is then again exported outside the country. So we cannot be talking of a just energy transition when there's that kind of injustice within the cycle, the chain of that battery. So my solution would be that involve the communities. Even if the communities must deal with this, they must understand what it is. And their input is critical. Communities are not fighting against development. Communities are fighting to protect their health, their livelihoods, their way of life. And these things can be done sustainably. I was in Ghana a month ago, working with the duty bearers on the issues of lead acid battery recycling in Ghana. And I was visiting the smelters, and they were doing quite well in terms of trying to control the emissions. They were trying to do everything as per the regulations that we had developed. But at the end of it, I asked them, where is everyone dumping the waste? Because everyone is trying very hard to control the process within the smelters to ensure that the emissions are not going out to affect the communities. The workers have their PPEs. Their blood is being tested regularly to ensure that the levels are controlled. But I have not seen anywhere where there is the waste. And then I was taken to a public dump site, and that is where all the waste is ending up. And I thought, what the hell? All this work is for nothing. Because at the end of the day, we are dumping the waste there. The rain is washing it back into the communities, and the communities are ingesting it again. It's going back into their food, into their playgrounds, into all that. So I recommended that they come up with an engineered landfill for the waste that the smelters were producing. So if we are serious about a just energy transition, we must ensure that everyone is brought on board. The capacities are built all across the globe, in all the countries, that everyone understands we have to acknowledge some of the dangers that come with energy transition, and we must invest in ensuring that we address this in order to protect communities, to protect livelihoods, and that's the only way that we will achieve sustainability.
Yes, and Juan Pablo calls these sacrifice communities, and I guess I'll segue to that question, but I do want to ask one follow-up, Phyllis. I am curious, and maybe this one is more personal, but you mentioned even going back to the early days when you were in jail. My question is, have you been scared as an activist and leader dealing with these issues? If so, how have you persevered through fear, founded or unfounded? And then today, do you still have fear, if you ever did?
I know I'm fearless.
Well, there you go.
No, of course not. There was a time I was coming from church in the evening with my son, and I got to my door, and there were some men outside the gate, and I assumed that they were watchmen for the neighbors. So I went to open my gate, and suddenly there was a gun on my head. And I'd never seen a gun before, and this is just after I had come from a meeting from the community where I was planning a big protest, a march, and they told me, "We've been waiting for you. We are told that you're trying to stand up against men in this society." And I was terrified.
Understandably so.
Not for me per se, but for my son, because he didn't understand what was going on, and he was screaming, and he was hungry, and he wanted to get in. But I had a gun to my head, and he didn't realize. And I told them, "Please let my son go in, and then do whatever you want to do to me." One hit me, didn't want to listen. The other one said, "It's a small child, let him go in." So I pushed my son in, closed the gate, and threw the key inside, so that they would not at any point follow him. And I was knocked and fell down. luckily at that time, one of my neighbors, who was very drunk and very loud, decided to show up with his bright lights on me, and that's how those men disappeared. And for almost a year, I could not sleep on a bed. I moved out of that house immediately, moved to a different town, and for a long time, I slept under my bed. I slept under my bed holding my son.
You are fearless. I really do mean that. I think for most of us, especially in communities that we live in, what you've just described is something that would be extremely hard to come to terms with. Yet here you are doing what you do.
Yeah, so there have been times, and different things have given me strength over the years. Different experiences. What got me out of that state was one of my colleagues that we worked with at the smelter died. He just collapsed and died, and I insisted on us doing a postmortem, and we found that he had very high lead levels and his internal organs had collapsed.
Yes.
And that got me so angry that I overcame the fear and started talking again. But it had taken me so many months of hiding, and I was just afraid that if I spoke up, maybe they would come after me or come after my son. But after Carissa died, I couldn't stop. I started speaking again and continued the push. And along the way, partners came in, friends came in, people who sympathized, academics came in. And actually, as I was telling the students, the people who actually helped me to win this battle were people who were in academia. Because there's a group that came in from the university, Moy University, and helped me to do prevalence studies in the community that concretely quantify the contribution of this smelter to the health and environment hazards that we were seeing in the community. There's another group that came in and helped me by advising me on how to handle my advocacy, and told me, Phyllis, you are unable to handle this here, going through the East African community, go and put a case through the East African Parliament, and then try and enforce it in Kenya. And that is how we were able to shut down this smelter and many other smelters across the country that were violating the community rights. Right. We still have, I think, 2 or 3 smelters, but they are closely monitored. The government has tried to build their own capacity as well to monitor the smelters that are existing in Kenya. So different things along the way have helped me continue, but it's not an easy journey. Right now I'm working on a nuclear power plant that is coming into our community, that it has been put between a coastal forest and a marine park in the area. So that is where the place has been earmarked for that. And of course, it's very difficult for me to take up a new project, understanding more challenges. And also because my profile has grown, I thought maybe it wouldn't be so hard anymore. Everyone knows me, the whole country, everyone knows me, so no one would come after me. But apparently, at my first at the community meetings, I was ambushed again by police. They broke up the meeting. They said, Phyllis, you're not allowed to hold any meetings. You are supposed to first get licenses from every other agency before you. So my situation, unfortunately, is not unique to me. It's a situation that all land and environment defenders across the globe. I'm a Right Livelihood Laureate, but I'm also a Goldman Prize Laureate. And what is similar across all the work that we do is the amount of risk that land and environment defenders face on a day-to-day basis. But also a lot of the successes is because of the partners that come on board to help us, mostly academics,
right?
The legal teams, the doctors, all these contribute to the successes.
Like the leaders, in this room.
Yeah.
Well, Yeah. I'll be the water moderator. Well, thank you, Phyllis. And that's a great transition to Juan Pablo. To Phyllis's point, I have a question for you around sacrifice communities. And you've spoken obviously about the concept of sacrifice communities. Can you elaborate on what that means?
Sure.
And secondly, how can the various partners involved throughout the supply chain, from business to consumers to employees to community members, prevent communities from becoming sacrifice zones, which Phyllis, you elucidated so well, how that impacts people?
Yes, in the first place, we didn't invent this term, okay? In Chile, this is a common language now, which is terrible because it was internalized. It even got into legislation. For example, there was a law during the first government of Bachelet for compensating, for example, the people in the upper Bio. So the concept was this is a energy or electricity sacrifice zone. So these people deserve a compensation. So the compensation was paying less for the electricity bill, so it was kind of lame and absurd. But the concept of sacrifice zones, not only communities, it's now, like, as I said, common language. And the thing is, to understand this in Chile, you have to learn a little bit of geography, and history, because Chile is a small country. It's 76 million hectares. It's 760 square kilometers. This country is 10 million square kilometers, right? So Chile is a small country, very narrow, as I said. Chile is 170 kilometers average width. In one part, it's 95 kilometers from the Cordillera to the ocean. In other part, which is kind of like geographical anomaly, let's say, it's 395, the widest. And very long and narrow, as I said, trapped between magnificent things, that is the Cordillera de los Andes. The desert is magnificent, and you have to be careful. Because they have tried to create the idea that the Atacama Desert is a Martian, a lunar landscape. And this, I'm sorry to say, it's the miners who have created this idea. Because it's not true. It's the driest area in terms of precipitations. But there was a lot of water in oases, in flash floods during the altiplanic winter. There was a lot of water. There is way less water today due to copper mining. And this is pretty amazing because one of the main protagonists in copper in Chile is a state-owned company. No, SQM is private. No, I was going to mention Codelco.
I know Codelco, yeah.
SQM is lithium. Yeah. I was talking about copper, you see. And there is a city there, Calama, in the basin of the Loa. We did a study, we wrote a book about the watershed of the Loa. And I'm very sorry to say, this is the most sacrificed, village or city, small city in the whole of Chile. It's under Chuquicamata, one of the largest copper mines in the world, open pit. You won't believe the size of it. We could have pictures, So it's being constantly bombarded with dust, metallic dusts, day and night. And just by the side of the city, to the east, is the largest tailing pond in Chile. I don't remember right now, sorry, the square kilometers, but it's a huge, tailing pond full of poison, And there is this city. And curiously, or maybe not, this city is totally degraded. I'm very sorry to say the things in terms of prostitution, drugs, cocaine, paste. It's terrible. It's total degradation. And it really amazes me because this company, if they had any intelligence, they would have done some red washing and green washing and have this city, which is the capital of copper in a way in Chile, have this city like a little jewel of greenery and water, whatever. No, it's a disaster. And it's under the foot of this huge mine. So you see, and the problem is we have this small size, very narrow, the desert in the north, the end of the continent in the south, the ice, as I said, you know. And then what is our economy based on? Pure extractivism. There are a few things like wine, that is a much better product with added value, etc. But the rest is mega mining, I said already, industrial fishing, you know, and these plantations, in both cases, agro-industrial, and pines and eucalyptus. We have right now 3 million hectares of pines and eucalyptus. And, you know, all these pulp mills, some of the most contaminating, you know, industries in the world, the pulp mills. You know. So Chile is a country of sacrifice in many ways. And I'm going to say something, again, about mining. We all use metals, right? You have your cutlery. I hope that your pots are steel and don't have any Teflon, by the way, and are not aluminum, right? You have, in the best of cases, you have some, you know, steel in your cutlery, your pots. Your car has an aluminum, whatever, and other parts with metals, whatever. But that doesn't compare with what mining, you know, the war industry is using today in this world. And what did I discover studying? Because I was saying, why so much, you know, hunger for copper, for molybdenum, for lithium, you know, why? And then I discovered that we have in Chile 3 giant European mining companies, Anglo-American. Check them out after hearing me. You know? They exploit, you know, diamonds, platinum, gold, silver, copper, molybdenum, praseodymium, neodymium, germanium, everything that exists in terms of minerals, metallic, non-metallic, and rare earth. They are exploiting them, obviously, mostly in the so-called third world. Also in Eastern Europe, the jadarite, for example, I don't remember exactly in which country. You know, I started checking this out. You know what these 3 companies do? What is their line of business? Provide minerals to the European arms industry. So it's demential because, you know, it's not only, when you say a mine, it's not only the mine. It's not only the open pit or the underground, whatever, you know, giant structures underground. It's also the tailing ponds. It's also the roads. It's also the generation facilities. Thermal plants using coal. In the case of Chile, still, we have thermal plants using coal, right? And then it's now the desalination plants, because of course there's less and less water in the north of Chile and in Chile in general. So now we go for desalination plants, which create more, you know, problems at the littoral. In the littoral ecosystems, they dump the brine to the side, you know, they filter all the larvae and lots of microorganisms and whatever. So it's another, you know, link in the chain of impacts, you know. And then you have the mineroducts, you know. They had this idea in Chile to mix rich earth with lots of copper with water and do a tube, and the tube goes down to the harbor into ships, and they take this copper concentrate abroad where they process it. And in fact, they discovered recently or some time ago that concentrate has also other minerals, and they're not taking into account. They're not paying Chile for those minerals. You know, they are in the concentrate. So that's what I mean. A mining operation is much more than what we usually think, you see. And then, again, and all that is for providing minerals to the European arms industry. You know, I have this in a document of the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. I could show you the picture, where they say these are our main providers of minerals: Anglo-American, Glencore, and Rio Tinto. You see? So we are not being anti-development when we struggle against. I'm a pacifist, by the way, I didn't say that. We achieved our campaigns and we stopped the dams in Patagonia without throwing one stone and burning one tire. You know, we are pacifists. You know, and sometimes you see opposing things is absolutely part of the solution. Opposing the bad ideas. And by the way, the Patagonia Without Dance campaign, we had two very important objectives. One, save Patagonia. We did. Two, steer the energy policy in Chile away from thermal plants and mega hydro. And we also achieved that, you know, because now there is a decarbonization plan in Chile for the year 2030, et cetera, et cetera. We hope that happens. But now the matrix in Chile is inclining itself towards solar energy, wind, and well, hydro, still considered a renewable source, but it's a change, a big change. The problem, though, is that if we don't get away from this, we don't transit away from, you know, colonial extractivism, then renewables are going to be our next nightmare. You know, you want to see the whole Atacama Desert full of solar concentration plants or photovoltaic? No, you know, you want to see the whole landscape full of wind, huge, you know, wind industries or whatever. Hopefully not. You have a lot of wind power, whatever. You know. So I think we really need to change the paradigm, you know, to go to a tertiary phase where a country like ours offers services, intelligence, you know-how, software instead of hardware. It's a metaphor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you know, the tertiary phase, right now Chile is trapped in a primary destructive phase. That's the only way to call it. That's what it is, you know. And the tertiary phase, you know what is the pillar of the tertiary phase? Education. Education, you know. In Chile, the young have to fight in the streets to be educated, you know. I have a debt with one of my sons, millions and millions of pesos, you know, because of his, you know, he's studying industrial design, you know. Millions of pesos, you know. It's like, how can a country not understand that the best ever investment you can do with your people is education, you know? And Chile is suffering from a really serious problem of, how can I say, multidimensional poverty, you know? Like, you go out to the streets, I mean, in the cities of Chile, you're going to see it with your own eyes. Apart from seeing, you know, the last statistic, you know, they did, you know, 21,000 homeless, you know, sleeping in the boardwalks. Well, here in the U.S., you have a very powerful problem in that sense. And the last thing I'm going to say, you know, in terms of solution, you know, we need a cultural revolution. But I mean a total cultural revolution where we put nature, and you know what somebody is going to say, but listen to me a little bit more, where we put nature first. You know, and this is not ideological. Where does the air come from? Where does the water come from? Where does food come from? Where can beauty come from? You know, the beautiful impressions. Nature, 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 nature. Where does climate regulation come from? Nature. Nature. So we need to, and then, you know, I'm an ecologist. I defend nature to defend the quality of life of all beings, including humanity. You know, I fight for nature to defend the quality of life of human beings, you know. So this is not clearly not in our, you know, development, you know, paradigm today, you see. We are, you know, totally stepping over, you know. I don't want to throw you the stats, you know. 50-60% of all forests and jungles destroyed. 50% of all coral reefs destroyed. 10% of mega fauna in the ocean, ictic fauna, only left 10%, man. So we are in a critical moment. We need to wake up, you know. That's what I mean, a cultural revolution in peace and love, you know. And so the Right Livelihood College, I think, is doing an incredible job there, right? Because these conversations among the youth, diverse people, and also, you know, diverse in terms of ages and gender, of course, and etc. You know, this is what we need to talk, you know. see together how we get out of this predicament. You know?
That's beautifully put, Juan Pablo. Right.
I know Ahmad has other questions that we really
Okay.
can't get to, but if anyone has any burning questions you want to write on the card, please pass
What
them.
were you saying? Alan?
Yes. No, it's beautifully put, Juan Pablo. And I have one more question for you, Sanjeev. And yeah, for folks, if you've got any questions, get them on the note card, get them in quickly, and maybe we do a lightning round here. I've been immersed in such amazing conversation here.
Don't answer tough question.
No, this is an
They've
easy
answered
one.
all of that.
It's an easy one for you. So the Sparks business model is built not only on innovative technology, but also on building relationships with labor partners and environmental justice advocates. What advice do you have for the leaders in the room, for business leaders, community members engaging with businesses on how to increase visibility, how to increase accountability when we talk about supply chain, other significant issues connected to just transitions to a green economy?
I'll answer that question, but I think we'll take a slightly different twist. But I want to answer what Phyllis was talking
Yes.
about and what Juan Pablo was talking about. Folks, when I started H-Power, the intent was to solve a technology problem. Hydrogen fuel cells, that was part of my PhD thesis. So there was certain technology, fill in the gaps that I and 3 others, we started H-Power to go and address. When I started Urja, by the way, that's not my wife or my pet's name. In India, in the Hindi language, I see him smiling. Urja means energy. So being in Silicon Valley, having wacky names, especially in the 2005, 2006 time frame, like names like Yahoo and Google, Urja fit very well in. So when I started Urja, the idea was to solve a market problem. Sparks, I could have just retired. By the way, I spent a lot of time in Chile and a lot of time in Kenya. Beautiful countries, both of them. Actually, I proposed to my wife we were biking in Kenya, and that's where I proposed to her.
Okay.
Yes. So anyway, Sparks was predominantly started with one idea. The idea is, everybody here is an adult, so pardon my language, but when we talk about energy transition, we're basically fucking up the earth. That's what we're doing. We are raping the earth. That's what we are doing. When we talk about cobalt, I've spent a lot of time in DRC. When we talk about nickel, go to Indonesia, go to Malaysia. When we talk about lithium, when we talk about copper, I've dealt a lot with Codelco. It's all about screwing earth. That's it. And they don't give a F-U-C-K. They don't. So the idea was that yes, we do need energy storage. Yes, we do need solar. We need offshore wind. We need wind. We need geothermal. We need everything. And all of this is going to require some sort of minerals or resources. What can we do on our small part, in our small way, that we do not rape the earth? So before I started Sparks, I went and spent some time in DRC. And what I saw there basically just shocked me. They call them artisanal mines, this wide. I don't know, Phyllis, if you've been to DRC. This wide. And folks, we have 2 boys. That time when I did this, they were in elementary school. There are 4 kids standing there. 3 go inside, 1 stands on the top. An adult cannot fit into this mine. They go without any respiratory stuff. Wow. And the one who's standing on the top is basically going, his job is, it's always boys. His job is to go tell the elders if these guys do not come out in 15 minutes. That's how screwed it was. I'm standing there and I was representing, Department of Energy. So they obviously tried to hide a lot of this stuff from us. But to me, it was, yep, no cobalt. Then we went to Indonesia and Malaysia to look at nickel. Same shit. Yep, same shit. Different country. And who's raping it? One country is raping it. We'll not name names here. And then went to his country, and we were treated like royalty because U.S. government is always treated like royalty.
Yes.
Your mining minister took us to the site where the miners were, the 56 miners were trapped for whatever number of days, and very proudly showing us that yes, we got them out. The question was, what are you doing now? Because earlier today we were in that open pit mine, Okay.
to
Yeah, so what we have done in our little way is no cobalt, no nickel. We're using lithium, and we are very, very, very careful who we deal with. That's why I mentioned the name SQM, CQMH. And the other components are iron, which come from the United States, phosphate that comes from Florida. So that in our little way is how we are making sure that we are not using any minerals. Yes, we have to use copper, so we have to be very careful on where the source of copper is. But none of the stuff that I just talked about is being used by us, and that's the only way we feel that we can contribute to the energy transition in a meaningful way. What was your question? I'm sorry, or did I answer that?
No. You answered it. You answered it
Yes,
beautifully.
okay. Now you start to get rid of me.
Telepathy,
With our
telepathy.
5 minutes remaining, and hopefully for folks, if you had questions we didn't get to them, you'd be able to speak to the laureates or to Sanjeev after. Do we have any of the questions on?
Maybe it's
on
a
Clara?
great last question, Kurt.
I'll turn.
Because it could be a lightning.
Yeah.
What is something or a specific point of improvement that gives you hope for the future? And maybe, if each of you could comment on that.
Can I start? You do. All these guys do.
Well, yeah. No, Sanjeev, we'll work our way down there.
I just answered. All of you
hope?
guys
Yeah.
do. You guys provide me hope.
There's no hope. I'm joking.
Not even a little, no.
For me, it's the little steps that, the little positives that I see on a day-to-day basis. I see Africa changing. I see communities becoming more aware about the need for them to understand what is going on in the developing world, especially in terms of extractives. I see the world trying hard. For example, the right to a clean and healthy environment was just recognized finally after many years of struggle. So there are little things along the way that I think give me hope that this generation just might get it right.
Well said. And Juan Pablo, what gives you hope?
We saved Patagonia from this huge project that was unbelievable, like a miracle. But more than that is to see how many people are waking up, and activating themselves all over the world, because that's one of the privileges. I didn't tell you all the bad experiences we had in these campaigns. Another day I'll tell you. A president of Chile said, I am an environmental Taliban. Well, anyway, so the thing is, but I have the privilege, on the other hand, of knowing, because I know, because I'm in touch with them, with millions of people who are trying to help all over the planet, Some of them getting more desperate, some more hopeful, whatever. And then, just an example, I spent a week in February in the south of Chile, inside of a forest, with 300 very good people, And it was, seriously, bonfire, ceremonies, music, different shamans from different cultures, no alcohol, no hard drugs, nothing, and everybody helping each other, full of kids all around, everybody taking care of the kids, no threat whatsoever. So that is happening, and we need to encourage, feed that, that's what we need to do.
Just a beautiful reflection. And to close, I would say I'm hopeful because I believe more and more we're seeing incentives align with the right actions and outcomes. When I look at shareholders, when I look at large institutional investors, when I look at many of the companies and leaders, both the Chancellor and I were so fortunate to deal with and work with, I see a lot of good people. And again, I see incentives that are aligned with making the right choices, which gives me hope. Again, a huge thank you to UC Santa Cruz, and a huge thank you and round of applause to these amazing panelists.
And I just want to thank you all again also, and thank you all for coming. In case it wasn't clear, this is one event that's part of a week-long conference We're having another discussion along similar lines tomorrow night at the UC Santa Cruz campus. It'll also be live streamed. You can go to rightlivelihood.ucsc.edu to find all the details. But Ahmad, Phyllis, Juan Pablo, Sanjeev, thank you so much for all your wisdom and all the work that you're doing. I really appreciate you being with us tonight. Thank you.